Welcome back to the Belonging Place, where we talk about belonging and community and connection. And I can't have a better guest that incorporates all of this. This is my friend Briana Johnson. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Kylie, so much for inviting me. I
Yeah,
love
of
it.
course.
We've had so much fun already.
Yes. So, first thing, I'm just going to have you introduce yourself. And I know you have a long-lived life. So, I've asked people who have long-lived, lots of experience to sort of do the elevator pitch of themselves.
I love
Short
that.
version.
And it's true. I've lived 1,000 lives for sure. I think one of the things I can say that I've been fascinated with my whole life is learning the lens in which people view their world. And that has come in many forms in my life. I went into college at BYU as a humanities major, which I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, oh, I could go to an opera or a symphony for homework. I could study the masters. And so I loved learning about that and how people explain their world. And it's been interesting to see over time how that's taken on different forms, whether that's been, learning blogging and writing, which I started as one of those original Blogspot. I still have it out there, which is so great.
I also have.
Yeah.
Blogspot.
It's so great. And then moving over to Instagram when it was started and social media and seeing the way that people represent their lives there. And then I was part of a company called Moms Living Happy, where I was introduced to interviewing. And then was able to do video interviewing, and then started as a podcaster 10 years ago. I can't even believe it.
Wow.
Where it felt so archaic. I remember the first time I heard about podcasting, I thought, that's just like a radio show. Who's going to listen to that? But just that power. And then moving into directing and film and the power of being able to help connect emotions and truly the lens and documentaries specifically. And as I've been able to see all of those, I've been able to see this thread of the incredible beauty and power and resiliency of the human spirit and the power that story is in connecting us. Even though our stories are so unique, there's these universal principles that when we share in our stories, they connect us and bond us in ways that nothing else can. And so that's been a thread in my life. I have so grateful to have 5 children, and my baby's having her golden birthday. She's turning 11 this week, and I can't believe it. And so that's been an amazing thing, and also to be able to see the world through their lens and what that looks like. But it's been, I love it. Before we were talking to Tommy, who's the producer, and he said this beautiful life, and that's how I feel. I really feel like despite all the crazy hard things, and all of them that have happened in my life, that it truly has been a beautiful life, and I feel very blessed.
Gosh, yeah. Great summary. You may know that I do this, and you may not know that I do this, but if we were to rewind and go back to the question that I asked you to introduce yourself, but you can't say anything you've done or anything you have.
Yeah.
How would you introduce yourself now? So nothing about work, nothing about being a mom, nothing about what you've produced or that you have. When you strip all of that away, how would you answer that question now?
I think this would be a recent way that I would answer, and I'm so grateful for that. But I am me, and I am loved by a God because I exist, and I love that. That somebody asked me recently what I found to be the meaning of life, and that's what I have come to understand is that I am loved and I love myself more than I have ever experienced in my life. It's because I've come to embrace all those parts of me. It has nothing to do with what I do. It has nothing to do with my mission or purpose. It has nothing to do with what I can create or what checklist I could, check off. It is simply because I am, and I've learned to embrace all the different parts of me and fall in love with those parts. And that has created a grounding and a peace that I didn't know was possible in my life.
Yeah, I love that. Like inherent worth.
Yes.
Inherent love. Like that we are just because.
Yeah.
And not because of anything we do or have.
Yeah. And that has been a hard one thing to have learned for me and one that I feel like God's wanted me to understand. But there's just this part of me that it's just innate to do and make things happen and go. And along the way, there have been things that have reconfirmed that, oh, that's a good thing and there's value in that. And so
Totally.
there's been a lot of misunderstanding that equated a worth
Yeah.
instead of simply
I mean,
being.
most of my friends and many of the people I have had on this podcast are what I call producers. And not like as a podcast producer, but just like in that they produce things.
Yeah.
They bring things and they
And
create
it's
wells,
fun.
I call them, or belonging places, or, I'm fiercely attracted to people. But behind
Mhm.
all of those people, they have to learn, I feel like, in order to find this grounding or this peace, that like producing, creating, while good and while, especially
Mhm.
if you're doing it for the good, it isn't who you are. And you don't need to be doing it to be like, we don't need to be producing or running a marathon or writing a book or doing a
Yeah.
podcast or having a nonprofit or to be valuable. Right.
Right.
And many people have gotten that confused or
Mhm.
exchanged because it is good and they're doing good.
Yeah.
Therefore I am good and I'm being good. And it's like,
Right.
these are not the same. And we have to be really
Mhm.
careful. What would you say is something that has helped you differentiate that recently? You said it's hard earned.
Hmm. I feel like having things stripped away, actually, and so involuntarily,
And God
having
does
things
that sometimes,
removed and
right?
pulled things out of my life has really asked me to examine who I am, and also retraining myself, because when you're wired that way, I've done a lot of studies of understanding the masculine and feminine dynamic and understanding what that looks like inside of us.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people misunderstand what that looks like, thinking that it's just either a core masculine is a male or a core female is a feminine and a woman. And that is generally, I believe, can exist, but there are those traits inside of ourselves. And I have the masculine trait of achieving and going, and the huntress as a feminine archetype actually is very predominant in me. And I've had the stripping away of a lot of the roles that I've had in my life. I've been divorced twice, and so removing the identity as a wife, and removing the identity that I once saw as what I would be like as a mother, and having that ripped and torn away, changing careers, even a lot of these things that have shifted in my life has really caused me to understand where inside of me does that masculine and feminine integrate into a place that creates one um, that is very fluid, in that I can understand what is needed in that moment. I can step forward and understand this part of me that can show up and get something done, or this one that just needs to be intuitive and listen. And so being able to understand that about myself has really changed the way that I look at getting things done, or how I identify who I am.
Yeah. I love this. We were off before we were filming. We were talking about kind of being in a liminal space, and both of us are experiencing that at different levels. One of the things that I have kind of like asked God in this liminal space is if He would really just slam shut doors that I should not be walking through, whatever they are,
Yeah.
relationships, opportunities, whatever. And because I was like, God, I'm willing to climb through the window. Like, it doesn't have to be this big door. And boy, is there a lot of loss and grief in that, because God will do that. He will close opportunities and He will slam the door. And it's painful to be like, well, I think I want that thing or that
Yeah.
person or that whatever. And every time that it's happened in this last 18 months that I've been sort of in this liminal space, I have to just like close my eyes and take a deep breath and be like, okay, I asked for that. Right? Question mark.
Well, I can envision when you say, what's fascinating is when you said like you would go through a window. Like in my mind, it's not you like opening a window like this at ground level.
No.
It's you standing on a stool on a tippy toe, going to like the second level story window where there's like a crack open and you're trying to pull
This
yourself
is exactly
up and slide.
I'm like, you don't have to make it easy because
story.
like doing that is going to make the experience itself so worth it, right? I don't want to have to do that. Is it easier to walk through the door?
I love that. That's the
Yes,
image that comes to
totally.
mind.
But that is because in my lived experience, one of the best experiences I ever had in my life was when I got to work at Anasazi, which is a wilderness program, and that
Yes.
was a window.
Yeah.
It was a part-time summer job. That like, why I had graduated with my master's, why would I ever take a part-time summer job? It was just like nothing was working out, and I was like, I'll just climb through that window, which was exactly like climb up, and there wasn't really a job for me, and they had to cobble things together, and the summer was ending, and I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. I ended up staying at Anasazi for another 3.5 years, so almost 4 years total, which was life-changing. Met one of my best friends that I still have to this day and have been able to help people get to Anasazi and have that experience. But that was a window. So I have lived experience where it's like, it's worth it to find the little thing that I would never really normally do, crawl up,
Yeah.
you know? And I think this slamming of doors or this pulling away of things is a painful process. I think it's a relatable process. People hearing us talk about, there's a lot of loss and grief in it, but there is a revealing.
There is a reveal.
Right? Like there is a truth. I think if our hearts are allowing it and we're allowing to learn from our experience and in the healing and in the grieving and in the messy middle, I guess we call it, and our becoming, that sort of is, like Michelangelo chipping away the rock. It's already in there.
It's already in there.
It's like a revealing of who we are.
Subtractive sculpture.
Yeah. I want to jump into something. My first question that I want to ask you is, you've spent like hundreds of hours inviting other people to tell their stories.
Yeah.
What part of your story do you think is misunderstood because there's nobody sitting around asking you the right questions?
That's such a great question. I think I've tried really hard in the way that I've shared my own story to be very vulnerable, but it is challenging when there's other people involved in your story and there are things that you want to preserve either for someone else who doesn't have a voice. They're not sitting there with you.
Yeah,
and they
you don't
have
want to tell their story.
Yeah, and they have a different perspective on your story or children. And so I think maybe something that people, even though they understand how hard things have been, they probably don't know how very hard it has been to carry a lot of the weight that you can't share with anyone. That there are things that are happened that isn't the time for me to divulge or share, but carry a weight because there's only me and a few people that know.
Yeah. And I want to reflect back to you. I think some of the people that come across as the most vivacious in life or like happy go lucky or like I've got it all together don't got it all together, right? Like, and they're not, it's not a facade that you're like happy or that life isn't exciting or that you can't see the good, but like we live in a world of opposites and we live in like a world of like these both can be true, right? The dichotomy of life, the yes and so I love what you're saying. It's like, I personally know this as one of these people, but there are some people in your life who you do tell these sacred and these like burdens or these heavy things. But like obviously this is not something, and I think this is good, and I would consider them sacred spaces, right? That not everybody knows, but I would agree that one of the things that's probably misunderstood about you is how light you make it seem, the burdens that you carry.
And I would take that as a compliment and as a caution.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah. Because
that's fair.
I feel like I have done so much inner work to be able to be grateful for my choices and see them as something that doesn't need to be shine a light on versus someone else's choices.
Mm.
Like I can see the decisions that I've made to do with what has occurred or the circumstances or other people's choices have happened in my life. I can look at my actions separately and be so proud of how I showed up in those moments. And that truly has created not just a rebirth in me, because I think we use the term reborn, which is beautiful, and people are reborn after the ashes. And the phoenix is such I wear a phoenix necklace, but it's such a symbol to me of the rebirth and the importance of that. And I truly feel like a phoenix. But there's something different between reborn and being reignited, which is being able to
Mm.
truly live and to be fully joyful in your life, to be fully embodied in your body and what it feels like to feel alive. And so I'm grateful that that's what I've been diving into, not just to be reborn in that I'm moving forward with my life, but to truly to learn for what I've learned and to feel alive inside of what I am and how I portray and act in the world, which is not which is feels very authentic. And then caution, I would say, because um to make sure that I continue to be as authentic as I can.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we have to navigate life with both those.
Mhm.
I think it's hard and impossible to just be like I kind of often talk about vulnerability being like going into surgery and like cutting yourself open, or even therapy sessions. I'm like, oh, people like open themselves up, their guts are like out there,
I
and then
can feel that way for sure.
you have to like sew it back up and in for them to
Yeah.
walk out into the world. They can't
Yeah.
just be left
Mhm.
open and exposed. They'll get sick and they'll die, right? And I think we're similar. We can't just always be vulnerable, and we
Yeah.
can't just have all of our things hanging out there. There's a danger to that, right?
Yeah.
We have to sort of figure out how to hold that and sew it back up, even for
Mhm.
temporary, and like go back out into the world and do good and do whatever we need. I think there's a difference between doing that with a facade or doing that genuine, but behind most people that are doing good and are sharing good, they have their own secret like loss, grief,
Yeah.
pain, right? I just don't know that many people that are just like
Yeah.
walking around. And there are a lot of beliefs, that people have, false beliefs that like if I had more money, for example, I would be happy. There's plenty of people who have a lot of money that aren't happy, right?
Yeah. I think that
If I
I
were
think what you
skinnier,
right, if
I
this
would be
happened,
happier.
yeah.
There's plenty of skinny people who
Well,
haven't
I
figured out how to live in the body that they have
oh,
now,
for
right?
sure. And
These are just two that I'm just
yeah,
like,
no, I love that. And I think I think where I would go with what you're saying is it's okay to not be happy all the time. It is
amen.
so okay to not feel like you can show up in something that someone would perceive as a positive emotion. I have gone to great lengths with myself, and even I've had these conversations with my children, which is so hard to navigate a divorce with young children and navigating their emotions, but to embrace being not okay, to
Mm,
be embracing the sadness, the
just being
despair, the
present.
anger, to be able to feel those things and not feel like there's something bad about that
Yeah.
or even sinful.
Judging that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so curious for me as I've been studying a lot. I started my journals when I was 8 years old. So I've taken a long time going through these journals, understanding where I developed some of these, belief systems around emotions. But there are a lot of emotions that I carried around where I felt so shameful that I must be doing something wrong
Mm-hmm.
if I
Mm-hmm.
am feeling sad. I'm not grateful enough if
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling this despair,
Cognitive
or
dysplasia.
I must not be, happy enough if I'm angry. But I think it is so beautiful to be able to sit in that. And I think being able to hold space with the and being able to hold space in this anger and the despair and sadness and all of those has given me a greater appreciation for the happiness, the joy, the pleasure, all of these emotions that we want to experience. It has given me a greater context to appreciate them, because I'm not feeling like I'm putting those in the corner,
Totally.
duct
Or
taping their
adding
mouth, or
judgment to them,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
creating or having shame around that. That has been probably the most liberating experience that I've had, is learning how to embrace all those parts of me. And so I would be super curious for people who have known me for so long, if they do feel like they can see a difference, even if they don't know the intimate details of my life. I'm curious, like the outward, can they see a difference in me being able to embrace all these parts than before? I don't know. It'd be really interesting.
Yeah. And I would say you should ask.
Yeah.
Whether that's like in an email, when I did an experience years and years and years ago. It was around single and stuff, but it was difficult. And I asked 10 people. I sent letters. People's response to you, like you don't control that, right? So like it's interesting. It's interesting to get, because most people don't solicit real-time feedback because it's very hard to accept what people say.
Like,
But man, and I don't recommend it to many people, but since you're wondering, it would be interesting for you.
yeah,
Different from having a conversation, because having a conversation is like in real time, and people talk more, I think, than they should or want to.
Yeah.
But like having an opportunity to write it or in some capacity. I love this idea though, because I love when people are sort of like, I wonder how much of what I'm doing inside is pouring on the outside.
Yeah.
Since we're sitting here, I can only tell you what I see. And it clearly to me, like the last 6 months, but there's been more, has like the external side of you, and I'm not talking about your physical, I'm talking about your spiritual, like looks different and feels different. There's an invitation, that there's like a drawing to on my end. So I can't speak for everybody else, but I also happen to be privy to some of what you're doing and what's happening, and so that probably helps.
Yeah.
I can actually know. I can recognize it. But I would want to think that if I didn't, that I'd be like, hey, I probably would. We just recently saw each other at a friend of ours was doing like what do we call that? Was doing like a presentation, like a
workshop.
A workshop. I think that if I hadn't known, I would have come up to you and been like, what's happening?
I know. And the thing was, I had some people that did.
Oh, good. Okay, so you did.
That had people that had come. I love what one friend said to me. He's like, I've never seen you look more free.
Okay. So people are.
Yeah, they are. I'm just like, it's just, I'm noticing
people who've known you, who have a lived experience with you. Okay, on this note, this might be my favorite question that I'm going to ask you. But I have a bunch, and this kind of pivots us. So you can put your brain and heart wherever you want. Okay. But what's a truth you've only recently become brave enough to say out loud?
Oh, this is a good one, because it's a life-changing one for me.
Okay.
That sensuality and sexuality is part of our divine identity, and is something that God wants for us. And that has shifted my whole life, to be able to, and that it started from embracing all of those emotions,
hurts and emotions,
and then transferring over to that. And the way that I've come to understand sensuality is a different lens than probably a lot of other people have. And maybe not, but for me, because it feels so new and exciting, it's because I'm learning that sensuality has to do with embracing our bodies and how to step fully present anywhere you are, utilizing this beautiful body that God has blessed us with all of our senses, to be able to be fully present by experiencing through our bodies. I think, especially in a woman in a traditionally conservative Christian faith, unintentionally, I believe that there is a lot of framework that's put around women's bodies, and associating shamefulness around some of those things, and also just in our culture in general. And so I've had to really learn a lot of those things, and to realize that my relationship with God and my faith is so expansive that it includes and incorporates all these beautiful things that I'm understanding about my body, and about particularly sensuality, and how that has changed the way that I show up in the world. And that is definitely new.
Well, and part of that question that I was asking is like, why do you feel like you can speak to it now and couldn't speak to it before? I'm curious.
I think because I belong. I
Mm.
belong to me.
Mm.
I Meaning when you ask me that question to think ahead, what does belonging mean to me? I think it goes back to that um, IFS, internal family systems, where there's all these versions of me inside, all these different parts of me that show up when things happen in my life, and to be able to listen to all of them and to embrace them and to see them as parts that have a message for me that I need to hear. And if before, when I would try and shut them up, it would make them louder or come out in ways that
Mm.
I couldn't, necessarily determine or how they would come up. But once I gave them a voice for them to speak to me, and by instead of shaming these parts of me, actually listening to what they had to say, has created a quiet mind and a grounding and a peace that I've never experienced, and a love of myself, a true love of myself that I didn't think I could ever experience.
Yeah. Let me ask you, and this might be a little personal, but in that process, your physical body has also changed.
Yeah.
And I wonder, as somebody who's walked alongside that journey with you and seen you post and stuff like that,
Hmm.
how much of the internal change had an impact on the external
I
change?
think there, I think there's a lot they coincide, but it's been interesting because going back to kind of that masculine feminine dynamic and being able to flow between the two, the idea of order and chaos, and the
Mm.
beauty of chaos, and the beauty of fluidity and intuition, all of those things, but the balance that order creates. So I was feeling in my life that I needed more order, and I felt like God was inspiring me to create that in lots of different areas in my life, purging things from my life that didn't, whether that was carrying things in boxes for nearly 2 decades from a marriage that had been out of my life for 8 years, but it was too painful to address and go, creating order there, removing those things that no longer needed to stay with me
They
and
weren't
I need
serving
to
you, yeah.
carry. Financially, getting things in order, and then, myself, getting myself in order, and my body and my physical. And this time of my life, I'm 48 years old, and my body's showing up with doing a lot of different things I wasn't doing before,
Yeah.
and a lot of experiences that I had that disrupted the way that I was used to living my life and showing up. And so creating order in that, was a beautiful way for these other things to also emerge and transform at the same time. And so I feel it's like a hand in hand.
Love
As
that.
I've dedicated myself to understanding how to be a healthy person, I've lost 46 pounds since January. Being able to understand and educate myself on what it takes to be healthy for the rest of my life, changing emotional mindsets around food and eating and health, um, and really being able to do that has enhanced how I feel about my body. I feel like I was in love with my body. In fact, I
Totally.
miss a lot of my curves. But I could truly say that I love myself before. This is just a different way because it creates peace when I
Mm,
know I'm taking care of
totally.
myself. It's an enhancement of my body being able to show up fully here because it's not fighting toxins or inflammation or blood sugar imbalances. Like now I'm showing up every day in a way that is taking care of this temple that God has blessed me with.
Gosh, I love that so much because one of the things that I feel like, and part of this is just being a human and looking around the world, and a part of this is being a therapist, is sitting. And I work with teens, right? Where I think this is exaggerated, but maybe not. Is that we kind of live in a world now where people don't really value what I would call self control or self mastery, or the
Mm.
ability to sort of say to myself, I can have things, but should I or shouldn't I? And what limits should I have? And, you can call it boundaries, you can call it whatever you want to call it. But we kind of live in a world where it's like everything goes and every emotion's okay and everything is okay, which leads to its own problems. It might feel
Mhm.
good in the moment. And we can talk about sex, we can talk about drugs, we can talk about digital, we can talk about whatever, where it's just like do whatever all the time. And I truly believe, both from what I grew up, from a spiritual place as a therapist, from what you just said, that there is so much freedom and there is so much confidence, or whatever you want to call it, grounding and presence if you can have good, healthy boundaries, or if you can have good self mastery, or even if you want to call it good self care, which has a different word for most people. There is something about putting those two together that frees the space for you to give more spiritual, more becoming. I don't know.
Yeah.
Thoughts about that?
I absolutely do. I think for me, and if you talk to my health coach, you would understand. He's like, yes, I didn't think it could work for me. I didn't, because of the way that I viewed my body, the way I view food. The term, we can use in the scriptures, kicking against the pricks. Like, I was so like, I don't love that there's rules of how my body functions. I should be an exception. Like, why can't I be an exception to these things? I did want to eat whatever I wanted. I didn't want to like really come to grips with the fact that there is rules of how things work. But when you can understand the principles and you can exercise knowledge and control and understand and go within the boundaries of how things work, it does put the power back to you, and you get to make the choice whether you want to be healthy or not, but that there are true principles. And so it is very freeing. Like, I just got back from a dreamy trip in France and was able to take the principles that I learned of how to eat and be a healthy person, that I had lost all that weight before. Like, I was nervous, to be able to go and not have a kitchen for 3 weeks, to be able to be surrounded by all of this amazing, which I did partake because I was able to follow the principles that I had learned. But being able to understand, again, going back to that masculine and feminine, like, there is a structure or a container that holds the fluidity that can exist, and you can operate inside of that. And to be able to, truly for me, learn how to apply these principles in other areas and to have this freeing experience.
Which I love, going back to your comment about sexuality and sensuality, because I do think that women often don't even think about themselves as sexual beings or as sensual beings. And some of that and a lot of that, I would say, is about their relationship with their body.
Yeah.
And some of it is the other stuff that's coming
so much
outside of it.
Yeah.
But I do think the ability to learn some principles and learn some boundaries, some healthy, again, I want to say healthy boundaries, equals this like freedom, this ability to, because I think sometimes so boundaries can be freedom from or freedom to, and we often only think of boundaries as freedom from. Like, I'm not going to be able to enjoy or this, or if I've heard people say, I'll use a different besides like weight. I've heard people say before, like, I don't want to take medication because I will lose who I am. This idea of like, and part of me says yes. And part of me says, and is that a terrible thing? Because this might help you be a better version of you. And also just like some education, psychoeducation that says like, this doesn't change and this doesn't change when you take this med, like this, and I'm not necessarily pro or anti-med. I'm like, whatever is going to help you be the best version of you. Right. But there are these feelings that people carry, that it's like, if I were to make this choice, I would have to lose this thing. And I want to go back to that. Right? That place of like learning about yourself, about your core inherent worth, about how you carry it. I'm not even talking about your weight, but how you interact with people and in the world. How much of that are you giving away to other people and other things? How much of that do you understand, or are you learning about yourself? And I've been thinking a lot as I've been preparing to like sit with you, and the many versions of you that you through the years have been, even just even my lived experience with you, but then knowing in the past. And I want to ask this this question is, and I don't really exactly know how to form the question, but the idea of the question is, if you were to sit with a younger version of yourself, and I'll let you pick how far you want to go back, how would that go? What would that look like? What would you say? Or even if you weren't going to say, what would this younger version of you feel as the woman you've become?
I've actually done this with myself many times. I've actually envisioned that, sitting with lots of different versions of me. And I think there's some versions of me that would feel like I've gone off the deep end. What are you doing? And
That's honest.
yeah. But what I truly like, I look at myself. I look at myself inside my first marriage, and I look at what my values were, and the output that I put out. That's when I started my podcast 10 years ago. I had been inside this marriage, and I look at myself, and I was doing so good. And I see myself. In fact, there was a video that was done on our family that I ended up watching by chance. And I was watching myself live my life. And the interesting thing that I felt was that she was limited. And I
Mm,
never would have thought that in that moment. I never would have thought I was limited. But knowing what I know now, the expansiveness that I feel and what I've learned and what a woman is, what she embodies, how you can show up fully alive and be in love with your life. It feels so expansive now. So I have so much compassion on her because I truly know that in that moment I was doing the very best that I could. And so I have so much compassion for her. There's definitely parts of me that have had to um, forgive is not the right word, but realize that I only could do what I knew. You only know what you know at the time.
you're just going
And
through life the
so,
first
yeah,
time.
yeah. And so being able to wrap my arm around her and say, I know you didn't know the things that I do now, and you did the very best that you could right then. And I am so proud of the choices that I've made and who I've become because of the things. I think that, and going through this project that I'm working on and going through all these journals, I went back and listened to it was my first paid speaking engagement. It was called Project Eternity. And it was during the time where my husband at the time had said that he didn't know if he wanted to continue our marriage. And I had been booked out previously before that revelation had been shared with me. And so I was feeling like, how in the world can I step into speaking at this conference on eternal marriage? How can when I don't even know what's going to happen with mine? And the directive that I got from God is to speak from where you were.
Mm,
And it was so scary. It was probably one of the most vulnerable moments of my life to step on stage in front of all of these married couples and tell them that I didn't know what was going to be happening with my marriage. But here's the things that I did know. And here's my relationship with God. And here's what I knew that He would provide for me and what would happen. And being able to be there and hearing myself give that speech, because I was able to listen back to it recently, I sobbed. I
mm,
sobbed because I was so grateful for that woman,
mm.
for the courage that she had to be able to traverse such uncertainty, that she could do that she could have faith enough to stand in front of people and say, here's the things I do know, and here's what I don't know, and it's okay. And
Yeah.
I'm going to move forward. It was definitely a pivotal time in my life. I actually, interestingly enough, I was at we have local like fair days here, and there was an American fork, and a woman came up to me I've never met before, and she was there at that time.
Mm,
She came up to me and said, I heard you speak, and that was eight plus years ago. And it was so fascinating what she was able to take away from that moment. And it just was like this full circle thing of like, I'm such a different person, but I have all along the way have these versions of myself have operated at the best that they could at that time. And I'm so proud of me.
and what a gift, because where you are right now, there's something to learn from her. Being
Yeah.
brave and being courageous and
Yeah.
stepping into the unknown and not necessarily knowing what's happening, and that you have your own. I'm just reflecting because you just said it
Mhm.
back to you. You have your own lived experience that tells you you're going to be okay. And not only are you
Yeah.
going to be okay, you're going to flourish because at every level you did,
Yeah.
right? I'm curious, as somebody who, kind of going back to one of the questions I already asked you, as somebody who sat with so many people and asked them, prepared to ask questions to get to the heart of the matter, to move a story along, because you're doing videos and things like that. You made a comment early on in this podcast that like we can sit with people and people are so different, but we have really these commonalities. I'm curious if you could share, like, I'm kind of like trying to glean from years of your experience, which we can't.
Yeah.
But I would like to ask the
Yeah.
question: are there some commonalities or some things that have come out for you, regardless who the person is, regardless of the story they're telling, and what are those? And even more, what are those? What have you learned by being on the front lines of that experience over and over and over and over again?
Yeah. I think one of the things I love and one of the podcasts that made such an impact on me was the process that this man made of unlearning something. And I think what happens when we have these hard times, where we have these pivotal moments in our life, we find that there is something that we needed to unlearn or let go of. And whether that was a false belief, whether that was something that we had been holding on to, whether that's letting go and realizing the loss that exists there, or whatever, there's something there that we get to look at and unlearn and let go from. And I think that that is truly where the grief and the loss come. And that is where the beauty comes. That's where the truly like being reignited comes from, is where we can understand that now that we have let go of the thing that we can't take with us anymore, that either was taken away or thing that doesn't no longer serve us as the new person that we are stepping into, that now there's space to be able to invite the things that are going to bring us into the other side. Like there's this gap in between. And so how we get, hello microphone, how we get from one side to the other really determines, what our trajectory will be at that time. And so as I've sat across from people who have lost, family members, who have had cancer, who have been, victims of sex trafficking, or, who have been an entrepreneur and starting a business, I think that they all come to this realization that there was something that they were holding on to, or something that was removed out of their life that they had to, even though it was physically gone, they had to emotionally and mentally be able to let go of that. There, in one of the videos that I've done with Jody Orgel Brown, I don't know if you know her, but an incredible human. She talks about when she had a brain tumor, that her therapist talked about that she has to grieve what she's lost in order to step into what is. And I think that that's so important. And it's so hard. It's so hard because I've found even that sadness has been a comfort in a lot of ways, because we know what it is, and we're familiar, and we don't want to lose touch with whatever it was that is no longer in our lives that we have to let go of. And that sadness is like that blanket that keeps us close to that, and it's hard to let go. But when we can recognize that and realize that this is where we are now, this is what we get to choose, this is how we get to move forward, and find a way to embrace it, it really opens up a way for us to live differently, and to live this new version of self, where we are honoring the past, we're keeping the things that we want, and then being able to embrace the things that we've built.
Gosh, I love that. I love that. There's a lot of things that people have in common when they sit in front of you, but I as somebody who talks a lot about grief and loss and the power that it is, I love that that's a through line. My follow-up question for this is, how does it feel for you to be like a keeper of stories or a recorder of stories? Or we share this in various ways, but I'm curious, like, can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it feels so sacred to me. And we were talking about a little bit before we started, but I feel so connected to people that they have shared a space with me. Like that is something I hold, and they may have a completely different relationship with me than I have with them, but I hold those things so sacred, because not only did I feel so trusted in that moment, we had this experience where they were discovering things for the first time. They were making connections. It was nothing necessarily that I said, but they were able to connect the dots that helped them to see their own life and their own story in a new way and be able to leave the conversation, hopefully feeling more understanding of themselves than they had when we started. And so I absolutely honor that. And then I also feel so privileged to be able to have like a broader understanding of humans and just this absolute love for them.
Mm,
And it helps me in the way I see other people, and when I'm coming into contact with someone, being able to understand that there is a story, that
mm.
there is a story inside of them that can change someone else's life, including their own.
Yeah, I love this. The other thing that I would say, just as a keeper and a holder and a recorder of lots of people's stories, is that it gives me good perspective.
Oh, it
Like
absolutely
sometimes I
does.
wish, and of course, I'm on the side when it comes to therapy of more like what I call people's unspeakable things, or like
Mm.
their um the hardest moments of their lives are showing up, right? But like I sometimes wish that my family members or some of my friends or people could like have more of this perspective taking. They could see more that where they are on the scale of like
Yeah,
what is out there. Not that your individual pain isn't relative. I would never take that away from people, but there's a gift that comes with perspective
there
of like
is.
what people are going through to help you to be like where you are, to help you with your gratitude, to help you with your like your own thinking process about how you interact in the world.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's been a gift, I imagine,
Oh,
similarly to you.
absolutely. Like the way my world is expanded
Mm.
from being able to hear the way that other people see life. It's truly a gift. That is one of my passions, is to be able to, like shared, like being able to see the world through other people's lenses. That is something that I continually love, being able to learn from other people in that way. And it changes you. And I feel so privileged, from having my podcast for 8 years, being able to be a director for 7 years, sitting across from people. I have been affected by every single person that I have held space with because I can see their life. I see myself in their life. And I think that's when we allow ourselves to do that, it does change us. It really
This
does.
is that connection. This is that vulnerability. This is that becoming, belonging,
Hmm.
whatever you want to call that. I also find, and I'd be interested in hearing how you feel about this. I also think you're in a creating process, because you are you and I am me, and there's a third. There's a us together. This is one of the things that we lose, that we don't talk about that much. And when we lose people when they die, is you don't just lose them, you lose the thing that was between the two, you and
So
them, right?
true.
And so one of the things that I feel is really sacred about sitting with people, whether it's podcast or therapy, is that there's this third, this piece of this creation where like I get to hear your story, you get to hear my story, and because of that we have this shared experience that's unique from anybody else, even the people that are watching the videos that you put out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different experience for them than you, because you were behind the scenes crafting it by asking questions and
Yeah.
creating. And I'm interested in your thoughts about that.
Well, the interesting thing that came to mind when you said that actually relates in a different way. And it's something I tell my family members who are married. I said, you don't understand the intangibles of marriage that exists between the two of you that I don't have anymore. Like being able to have shared goals and shared, conversations and planning together and all of these things that like the space that exists
Mm,
between the two of you, like things that I'm sure I took for granted in marriage that I didn't realize until after they were gone how powerful those are. But there is a shared something that exists. It's not just, that you are in a partnership with someone. It's like what you have created
mm.
together that exists. And it's an interesting feeling to have that and then not have it.
And or never have it, because I'm
Yeah.
sitting on the side of the table where I know there's a loss in not having that. When I've had
Yeah.
to make some big life decisions, like boy, did I wish there was somebody else. Not that I'm not capable, but
Right.
I wish there was somebody else that could have had that
Yeah.
experience
Shared
with
it with
me,
you.
or I could reflect to it. I
Yeah.
think having it and losing it, never having it, there is something about this intangible third thing that happens when
Hmm.
we're sitting with people. Um, okay. You've had to reinvent yourself more than once.
Yes.
How do you know when it's time to let go of an old identity or let it die to make new. And maybe you don't know, maybe it just happens outside of your control, but I'm curious, as somebody, and you love the theme of the phoenix,
Yeah.
like, your thoughts about that.
I think often I say that the time that you give yourself for reflection, whether that's journaling, meditation, prayer, whatever that is an absolute gift to yourself. Becoming self-aware of where you are and what you need, and having honest conversation with yourself is an absolute gift that I think a lot of people don't practice, and that I would invite people to do that. It is through those moments where, when you come to understand who you are and realize that the things and how you've operated in the past are not how you want to do things anymore, and you feel that pull. And it's so conflicting because there is that comfort in doing
That
things the same.
homeostasis.
Yeah. You've been doing things for decades in one way, and it's so natural to go back to that way. But when you can feel that pull, when you can feel like it's like inside, you're just like, I don't want to feel this because I know I have to change. But there's like this pull inside of you that you know. Because I really feel like people know, and it's whether or not they're in tune with themselves to recognize that, whether they allow themselves to give voice to that they'll know that they need to do it. And that's completely different, knowing versus actually doing it.
Or being still long enough, because there's a fear sometimes you're treading water in life that if you were to stop, you would drown.
Oh, and I feel
rather
like
than you
so
would
much.
fly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
I joke with people that there was this like meme in a newspaper. It was way back. It was like from the 50s or something, but it came out again, and there was these two lines, and one of the like desks was, who believes in change or who wants change, and there was all these people and their hands were raised, right? Then there's this other desk kiosk over here and says, who wants to change? And there's nobody in the line there. Like, everybody believes in change. Everybody wants to believe in change. Everybody wants to change, whatever that thing is, right? But the ability to actually change, I love this. I do believe very strongly, personally and otherwise, in my practice with my friends and my belonging places, and also as a therapist, that like, there is something about being still long enough, whatever that means to you, like you said, that you can feel the feelings and they're not going to kill you, because there are a lot of people that are just like, I will fall in a puddle. I will,
like
whatever
that.
your thing is, I will burn up into flame. I will, whatever you've attributed to, like, if I were to stop, everything's going to fall apart. That,
or if I break, how could I ever put the pieces back together?
Whatever your thing is, because everyone has their own thing. As I sit with people, I was like, what is the thing that you're the most afraid of? And what if we just, I call it like going all the way through the rabbit hole. What if we just went all the way through the other side? What's the worst thing or whatever? And what if you were to embrace the worst thing? And rarely do people even have to hit or even get close to the worst thing. I kind of, sometimes, this is an overused metaphor, but I think about the caterpillar and how much it has to go through to become the butterfly. And it's very uncomfortable, and it's very like gross actually in the process of, and it's messy. It's in that messy middle in the becoming, right? Everybody wants the butterfly. Nobody wants the becoming. I think, as I sit across from you, one of the things you value, one of the things I value, we share value, is that becoming process, right? Absolutely. Because you can see what happens, because the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Anything, right?
It is true. Like, it is still,
it's still scary.
The intensity is still there. It just, I feel like the duration has become shorter.
That's fair.
And I think there's also like, hello microphone again. I also feel like, because you have done it before, you remember how hard it was.
Oh, for sure.
So it's like, do I really?
I know how painful that is.
But I've come to appreciate the destruction that comes before the rebirth in a way that I didn't think I wanted to or could. Like, I know I might get this wrong, but I believe it's a Hindu goddess Kylee, and it could be, and I apologize if I didn't get it right, but her she's the goddess of destruction, meaning the goddess of clearing. It's a clearing the path, clearing what was not meant to be there anymore in order to create that space for the rebirth and the new and
New
the creation.
beginnings.
But it is a literal destruction and a clearing of things. And so we remember what it felt like before to have that destruction come in. Sometimes it's really hard to allow it to be able to come, but the only way for us to get to the butterfly, the only way to get to the phoenix, the only way for us to get through it is to allow for that clearing, to allow that destruction to take place, which is so hard because sometimes that can mean loss of relationships, loss of jobs,
Loss of faith sometimes
loss
for
of
people.
faith of what that looks like. Their faith takes on a different form, and so to be able to
Loss
allow
of self
yourself,
sometimes, loss of dreams. There's a lot
so
of
many
like
things.
becoming.
And so we're like, well, why do I do it then? You have to truly believe that you have to have faith in the new, that the new is going to be an enhancement, an expansion. And I feel like if you allow yourself to feel those things, that you can start embodying it and feeling it actually happen. And it's only then that I feel like you're like, okay, I can do this. I'm starting to see these things that I said I wanted actually take shape, and they'll take shape in ways that we didn't necessarily want them to or think that they would, but they do begin to form.
But it's only in the walking that you get. It's only in the doing, right? Get up
in
and
the
do
motion,
that.
putting yourself in motion.
It's interesting because I will just share from my side of this that the lesson that I'm always learning in this, because I feel like I'm trying to be a better version of me, is it goes back to when I was really little and I was learning about chickens inside the eggs, and that they have to peck their way through the eggs. They have to build that resilience and muscle in order to live. If you crack it, if too early, they won't have the ability to and this is lots of animals have to stand on their own. You can't help them. There's an important growing, becoming part of that. And I feel like part of my hardest or my resistance to this process has been I just want it to go fast. I'm let's make it happen. Let's jump out of this, in the last 18 months, I feel like I've been marinating in my liminal space, and I've been trying to figure out, with the help of God and also my friends, how not to jump from one frying pan into the next frying pan, how not to crack the egg before the experience, before the growth or the muscles or the things, the emotional dissonance, whatever that I know that I'm needing to learn for the next phase. And boy, does my impatience of just being let's just get to the other side, or let's make the next thing happen. It's I don't know if that's relatable to you, but I'm sure there's people that's relatable to. I am a make it happen person. And I know I can. I could go do the next thing. I'm not incapable of doing it. But the lesson that I'm trying so hard as we speak, sitting here is, and maybe it is at what cost, but it's sort of in my faith base, there's this sort of Martin Harris story, right? That you ask and ask and ask and you get the thing, and the thing it's not the good thing for you. And it's I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the person that's impatient or whatever. I want to learn the lessons. I want to do the becoming. I want to experience the grief or the loss or the heartache because it's meant for me in my timing. And on, like you said, and it's not even because on the other side I'll get all the things, but it's because where I am is where I'm supposed to be learning, what I'm supposed to be doing, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's hard,
Well, I love that. And as you were sharing that, kind of going back to what we talked about, the subtractive sculpture of a sculpture of Michelangelo, and this idea of loving ourselves as we are, but also wanting to take layers off, reveal more of ourselves, instead of moving towards something because we think we're not good enough now, and coming from if I, you're going back to what you're saying, if I only did this one more thing, then I would be enough, or I would be this, instead of coming it from, this is who I always have been, and I'm shedding this layer, and this ash is now finally falling off, so that I can be fully the phoenix, that the rebirth and the reignition can be there, because I'm doing it from a place of becoming myself more, and revealing more of ourselves, then coming from a place of proving or achieving or from lack.
Yeah, and I want to come back to kind of the belonging places, the whole purpose of, and I want to say this, and I want to kind of share, and then I want to invite you. One of the things that I'm realizing as I'm doing the podcast, as I'm living my life, is that my belonging places, or my friends, or my people, are so helpful in that process. I was saying the other day to a friend of mine, like, I said, you know what I realized the other day, and she's like, what? I said, if I were to sit with a group of my friends, I know this truth. Not one of them is thinking about how much I weigh.
Oh,
Because I
yeah.
have my own problems with like how I feel about myself. And my friend kind of laughed and she's like, what do you mean by that? I said, I just know they're not thinking about how I look. They're because we have a friendship that's built on our shared experiences and our like emotional intelligence and like what are you learning and what are you growing? And like not once are they thinking, gosh, she's gained some weight, or gosh, she's lost some weight, or they're just not, right?
No.
And I feel like I know that because of my belonging places, because of the
Mm.
people that I'm around. And that helps me then be like, okay, like, what does that mean about you? Like, do you think about ever? I'm like, no, I never think about how much money they make or how much weight they have, or like, I'm thinking about them as a whole person. I'm curious for you, as someone who has crafted lots of really awesome wells or belonging places, friends or different
Mhm.
things, how they help you in your becoming, how those people, those friends, those wells, because while we do independent work, we're not independent, right?
Oh, it's so important, especially as an entrepreneur. Like it can feel like you're a silo.
Mm-hmm.
It can feel that way. And I think it's so important with people who are change makers and light bringers to be able to come together. For a portion of my life, one of my many lives, I had a group called Dawn Breakers, which was essentially that, bringing together people who felt this passion and desire to be able to share with other people what they've learned through the darkest moments of their lives. And the beauty that came from that was a support system,
Mm-hmm.
was buoying you up, was getting that perspective. I'll never forget the conversation I had between that I observed between my mother, a, a beautiful woman, and this other person that had lived a completely different lifestyle. Being in the same room and them to have this conversation about universal truths and what that meant to each one of them, and to watch their expansion of understanding, the compassion that existed, to be able to learn how to have hard conversations and hold place for other people, what that did not only for them, what it did for me to watch
Yeah.
it happen
It's a
was
generative
just like,
space,
oh
right?
my gosh, I have to help more people to be able to experience this, because it changes you. It changes the way you show up in the world. It changes the way that you approach someone, the way that you can look someone in the eye, the way that you can treat someone else changes once you have that understanding more. And that comes from conversation, holding place for other people, gathering together, connection, story.
Yeah, I love that. Is there anything in particular about how you did or how you created or crafted or tapped in people that has helped you as a person in your becoming? Is there anything that you could share, choices that you made, decisions that you made either to like let people go or bring people in? I'm just curious about, I think I think people think less than they should about who's around them and how that
Mm,
impact happens around them. And I just know you have like gathered some really
yeah.
important people that you keep around you. Why is that and how is that?
I
And
feel
any
so
thoughts about that?
blessed. I love that, because you probably feel similarly to me. Is that I feel like I've always had good friends, and I've only come to understand, in later adult years, that can be very rare. That to be able to be surrounded by people who can hold space for one another.
Yeah.
And as you
All the
learn,
versions of you,
yeah, all
right?
the versions of you, and who can challenge you and be honest, and it's not just like, oh, that's great, but like to ask you questions back, to like, oh, well, I heard you say this. This is what you said you wanted. Is what you're doing reflecting what you said you wanted? Are you moving towards that? That can be really challenging, but to know that you can step into a circle of people who not only know you, but can listen and challenge what you're
Mm.
saying and hold space for that in a loving way, not in like a trying to shame you, make you feel bad, but in a way that
But
helps you
hold
to
you to
think.
yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
holds me to myself and helps me to think like, oh, am I moving towards what I did say that I wanted that thing? Am I actually taking steps towards that? And then even being there as a support system to help you. Like my best friend, she sends me a text at 8 p.m. every day because there is something that I want her to check in with me every day about, and she does it. And I love that. I know that she's going to
She's
she's
consistent.
part of my world.
Yeah.
She's part of my world. And I think so much we have this idea that we don't want to be intrusive. We want to let people live their lives, or I don't know if I'm going to say the right thing, or we just have like a lot of these stories that we tell ourselves, and so it keeps us isolated from one another. I don't know if I should ask about that, but learning how to be able to ask, learning how to be a part of other people's
Learning
worlds
how to
is
listen so you can know.
listen so is so important, and it can make such a difference, especially during these liminal spaces where
Mm.
you're uncertain of what's coming next. So
I love that. I've last two questions for you. The second to last question is this. I know that you're very passionate about women. I know you're very passionate about this leadership skill that I would say, like, lift where you stand. That I know that you've still got a lot to learn, but there's things that you've experienced and that you've learned. And that could be a whole podcast, that could be a whole book, that could be a whole thing. But I wanted to give you a space. You have a space a little bit here to maybe share a little bit about what is that about? What is that passion about? Why is it driving you? I know there's some projects and things down the line that are really lighting you up, but just wanted to give you a space to talk about that.
Yeah,
Why?
I appreciate that. And I think it correlates to a lot of what we have spoken about today. But it's truly the possibility that you can see your body, you can see your story, and you can see yourself without shame, only love. And I have found that in my life by expanding my understanding as a woman of my emotions,
Mhm.
of what feminine creation looks like, and also what sensuality feels like and what that does without abandoning yourself or
Mm.
without abandoning your belief system or your faith. And I feel like that is so important because I've seen what is done for me.
Mm.
I've seen the transformation, the way that I love myself, the way I love my life, despite all of the heart that exists. And I think that's
Or
what,
because of
or
all the
because,
hard
yeah,
things.
because, and despite all of those things,
Yeah.
that can exist.
Mm.
And God wants that for you. God wants you to experience your body. As a woman, God wants you to understand what it means to be a woman and in a very expansive way. And how that changes you. I think about the previous versions of me and the survival mode that I was operating in during a lot of those times. If you would have come to me and been like, learning how to have sensuality as your part of your divine identity is going to change your life, I'd be like, who has time for that? And how in the world could that actually help me? Truly.
Totally.
Yeah. And so it's like being able to understand now, seeing the steps that I've taken to be able to get there and to see how much more alive
Mm.
I feel, how much more present that I feel, how much more connected I feel with individuals, with my children, with those core people in my life.
With your creator.
Yeah, with my creator, the strengthening of my relationship with my heavenly Father, with my heavenly Mother, has become so great and so tangible to me that I want to be able to share that with other
It just
people.
has to come
Yeah,
out of
I
you, right?
want,
It's like,
yeah, because I want people to feel that it's possible, that they don't feel like they have to abandon things that they are so important to them, that it's not in conflict. It actually adds, expands.
generative.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited for the future of this
Yeah,
and where
thank
people can
you.
like learn from what you've learned already and kind of be a part of that process. My last question for you, you kind of mentioned thinking about it, is that I ask everybody is, what does belonging mean
Mm.
to you?
Belonging to me now means that all these parts of me have a space,
Mm.
that they're embraced by me, and that they can trust me as my highest and higher self, my divine being, to be able to listen to them, to be able to give them a space to learn from them, to not abandon them, to wrap my arms around them and thank them for being here, for teaching me what they're here to teach me, but to let them know that I can lead us, that I can
I
move us
got it.
into this next thing. And the peace that has created in myself, a belonging that I feel in myself, helps me to show up in any space that I'm in differently,
Mm.
because I feel it within me. And I think being able to do that in general allows your focus when you're stepping into a space to think about what is needed in that space with someone else or
Mm.
for someone else. And so it creates a type of belonging that isn't something that is a need. It creates a connection instead.
Because I think people can feel that groundedness. They can
Mm.
feel that, whatever you want to call the word, confidence. They can feel the assurity, right? Like it invites. I think most people are looking for that. They're
Yeah, the
looking for the
freedom.
grounding. They're looking for the presence. They're looking, and it's an when you have it, when you're
Hmm.
anchored, like you don't have to do anything to gift it to other people because they can feel it
Yeah.
inside of you. And the interesting thing that I just want to say about this is it doesn't change the hard circumstances that surround us. I don't feel like I don't want to be this naysayer, but I just want to
No.
be realistic when I'm sitting with people because I know you and I know the
Yeah, you know
circumstances
my
that you're
life
in. And I
circumstances.
want to say that there's something powerful. I'm going to cry about both, right?
Yeah.
Like being like, I'm going to belong to me. I'm going to do the work. And I'm also don't know everything and how everything's going to turn out. And that is okay because of who I believe and who I'm anchored to.
Mhm.
And
It's so true. It really does. Like we talked about that. Circumstances may have not changed now than it has 6 months ago, but we've changed,
yeah,
and the way that we can show up and what that does in how that affects everything else outside of us, as far as energetically, and the trust that we can have that even though we can't see what's happening, that there are things happening
oh, and
that,
the world will
yeah,
conspire for your good, right?
yeah,
And the people will
people,
conspire
yeah,
for your good, right? And
and God's a master orchestrator.
amen. Okay, where can people find you if they
Oh,
want to find your
yeah.
podcast or they want to follow along on your journey? Are you writing anywhere? Just tell us where
Yeah,
you're.
come right now. There's a lot of things in the works. So right
Yeah.
now, come find me on Instagram at
Okay.
Life Beats Project, which
Okay.
is the name of my podcast that I did. Come there, and I'll be pointing you to other things that are coming up. I would love it if you want to know what's next, because there are lots of things coming up. There's a link there that you can click for my email list, so
Love
you
that.
can know all the next things.
That's perfect. Well, my friend, I'm excited to be on the journey with you
Thank
as a
you.
friend and a
Thank
person
you,
who
Kylee.
loves you. I'm excited for the future, but I also just like love you where you are. And I've been so
Thank you.
grateful to like be a part of wherever you've been on your journey. It's been very inspiring and very permission giving, which I know other friends of yours, I'm sure, have felt. And we wish you the best on your journey.
Thank you, Kylie. Sure love you.
Love you.